I have to ask our expert here something totally irrelevant before we start. What's the moratorium on breaking news when something happens on Sunday night and we get to it on Monday evening? I'm Thomas Frank Carr, Ryan Snyder with me here. Ryan, are we still in a breaking news window, or are we just talking about a commitment here?
Personally, no. I mean, breaking news has got to be a little faster than that. But
it's like 20 minutes after, and then it's over.
I blame Fitz. He had to go to the beach this week. You know what I mean? So, I mean, I'm trying my best here to organize. But, no, I'm just giving Fitz a hard time. But I'll just roll right into it, man. Obviously, we're talking about Cortez Harris on this one. Penn State obviously picked him up Saturday afternoon, Saturday evening, or excuse me, Sunday evening. Let me clarify. 6'2", 200 edge rusher out of Riverdale Baptist in Maryland. Originally was at the Matha, ended up going to Riverdale for his junior season. Haven't been able to track down stats. I know he got a shoulder injury that I think he had fixed here in the offseason, and that's kind of impacted a little bit of his training and the way things have progressed for him over the last couple of months. But look, there's a reason he's a 4-star prospect, number 199 in the nation by 0-3, 24th at edge, 4th overall at Maryland. I mean, there's a lot of potential there. I think we saw some of that at Under Armour. I thought, from what I saw, I thought he was best in positional drills. I think he has work to do with hands and stuff like that, but all these guys do. I mean, you're never going to really find too many defensive ends at this level who, already have that kind of stuff mastered down. But I like the way he moved in certain drills and different things like that. I believe he ran a 4.9 at Under Armour, which is a little bit slower than what you probably want to see for a 6'2", 200. Yeah. Obviously, because he's going to have a lot of weight, right? I mean, maybe not a lot of weight, but he's going to have to certainly get up in the 230s, 240s, I think, if he can, at 6'2". So that's interesting to me, as far as like, can he improve on his athleticism and speed wise while also adding weight down the road? But other than that, like, there are a lot of things here that also make sense. I mean, Cortez is a great kid. I think, he's always really liked Penn State. He's always been very highly of Barnes and Franklin. And, I think the overall program fits him and his family pretty well. So there are a lot of things there that make sense. I'm just really kind of curious to see how he develops, how he progresses as a senior this upcoming season, because again, coming off a shoulder injury, he's been kind of limited training wise over the last handful of months. And we'll see where things go. But that's the big thing for me. I really want to see where he takes his game here next fall.
I'm just curious when it comes to this particular position, not just Cortez Harris, but the first defensive lineman in the class of 2025. Are you surprised that it took until now to get a player into the class at that position with Deion Barnes, considering how many they had last year in this cycle?
Yeah, well, you kind of hit on it a little bit there, right? I mean, they had a great year last year, as far as defensive end, defensive line overall. I mean, when you look at a lot of the guys they've offered, I mean, Zahir Mathis, right? I mean, he was a guy we had circled for a long time. Ari Watford, of course, goes to Clemson. I mean, there wasn't like too many guys that was like, oh, okay, he absolutely makes sense. He should absolutely end up at Penn State. I thought Jaden Lofton could have been one of those first commits. Of course, he commits to Tennessee. I believe it was back on like June 12th, somewhere in that ballpark, after taking an official visit there. That was the one that kind of, I think, surprised most people because he was kind of a guy that, I won't say we had him penciled in, but he made a lot of sense to end up in this class. So I think it took a little bit longer than most would have expected. But like, again, a couple things with defensive end this year. One, like Charles has hit on this multiple times, like the overall defensive end class probably is a little down a little bit compared to the last handful of years. And I think Penn State, from the vibe I get from different people, they would kind of agree with that. So they've been extra kind of picky, right? And maybe being extra picky at times is kind of, I want to say hurt them, but maybe kind of prolonged getting some commitments in this class, because there were certainly, some guys that I think would have probably committed to Penn State, but I think Penn State kind of, tap the brakes here and there on different situations. So, but look, it's important to get Cortez Harris on board from that perspective, without a doubt, because they need to get the ball rolling at defensive line. It's really the one position still that I think needs a substantial amount of work. Of course, they want to add some receivers and, maybe another linebacker or so, but for the most part, when you really look at the, whatever the 8-9 scholarships that are probably left, I mean, a good chunk of those are going to go to defensive line.
Yeah, if you look at the comments on any of our recent commitment videos, it's where are the receivers? Where are the receivers? So glad you throw that caveat in there, or else I think somebody would burn the internet down. But Cortez Harris, interesting player. I find good things in his game and some interesting things that I'm looking for when I'm going to be looking at his next, full game evaluation. You take a look at his highlights here, and one of the things that stands out to me is he's a good overall football player in terms of, I think he's got good awareness of the game, especially as a run defender. He had a lot of good clips where he's sitting in run defense and playing that well. But you're right. I think when it comes to hand usage, there's some stuff. I started digging in a little bit because obviously this is not happening as he committed. We had about 24 hours or so here to check things out. I think he's better, weirdly, on full game footage of using his hands than he is in his highlights. But at the same time, that's an area where he's a little bit underdeveloped. I do like like I said, the way he plays the run also is something that for an undersized player, I find value in that. But a lot of his wins here on the highlight tape, you wouldn't say these are dominant wins from a player that has overwhelming skills. And that's really the question is, he's a 4-star player, not trying to take anything away from him. 6'2", good length for his frame, but not extreme length for his frame to make up for not being 6'3", 6'4". And then the question then becomes, like you said, can he add that weight? Can he get to 245, 255 pounds? Because really, Ryan, we talk about this a lot of Penn State wanting guys to be a certain size, and generally Penn State's size is a little undersized for everybody else at defensive end. So 250-pound, 249-pound Adisa Isaac is on the lighter side, and that's kind of where you're going to see Cortez Harris, presumably at some point in his career, based on what you see from him frame and length and size-wise. So playing the run well, playing above your weight, playing stronger than you are, those are all important characteristics. And then, is that burst off the line of scrimmage good enough to make him a standout player? Because you look at the way he moves, I think he's super fluid, and he does not have a lot of wasted motion. But that first step is so critical to a defensive end. It's almost the whole thing. When it comes, you can make up a lot of ground from a size perspective if you are unblockable from a speed perspective. So where does he land ultimately on those size speed metrics, which I think is the main crux of the conversation here for Cortez Harris? Still, like I said, a good football player. There's things to like. It's just interesting because, we kind of get these two buckets of Penn State defensive end prospects. You have these guys that are freaks. You have the Nittinay Lions. You have Dennis-Sutton, who have this immense size. And then you have some of the other players that maybe started out as linebacker and are transitioning to defensive end. I think there's a multitude of skills there where you maybe have a Zariah Fisher-sized or type player who is good at dropping into coverage and has a flexibility of positional skills. Cortez Harris could fill that role as well in a defense where you're still playing a 4-down front, but zone dropping, zone blitzing is very important in college football, regardless of what defense you run. And there are, I think, roles that guys who don't have that classic prototype size can fill. So where he lands on that spectrum, to me, is really the conversation of his commitment and his time at Penn State. So anything else you want to put in here with Cortez Harris about the first edge defender and the first defensive lineman in the class of 2025?
I think his explosive numbers from kind of what we gather from Under Armour are encouraging.
Okay.
He had about a 9.5 broad, I believe it was somewhere in that ballpark. Now, it wasn't the Zion Ellie 10.5 broad. I mean, Zion Ellie is going to be a stud, right? I mean, there's a reason he's going to be a 5-star player. But like, for example, Zahir Mathis was at the same camp, and he had about an 8.5, 8.75. He had under 9, put it that way. And the same with verticals too. I believe. If I remember correctly, I believe Cortez was around a 29 and Zahir was around like a 25, 26. So just we were trying to measure.
So those are all good numbers. Yeah.
I mean, look, they can be, again, like that's why I'm using the Zion comparison, right? Like, I mean, Zion Ellie is going to be a freak in the area. He already is. Came up Penn State, of course. We both watched them there. Like, there are some freaky defensive ends who could put up, easy broad jumps and verticals. I think Zion Ellie's vertical was like 35 inches or something. It was insane. But again, Cortez is solid, right? I mean, again, we look at Zahir Mathis as a guy that now Zahir Mathis also has more size on him and stuff like that. Like, I mean, they're they're not apples and apples. Because Zahir is already like 235 pounds or something like that. So
Yeah,
there
and
is
he's got
difference there.
insane frame. You know, he's a guy that's going to have that 6'5" plus frame or whatever he is in a height perspective, but he's long and he's got a lot of room to fill out.
I mean, I think Zahir's like just under 6'6" or right around 6'6". So again, I don't want to say these are apples and apples, but like when we're trying to look at numbers and measure different things with different testing stuff, like Cortez was kind of one of those guys that would say like a little above average to, you know, like in that B kind of range, right? So there are little things to work with. I think, again, like when you look at like shuttle times and 40s and stuff, like how he's able to improve athletically and how he moves when he needs to add weight. It's no secret. I mean, 6'2", a little over 200, like he's going to have to add weight. If he can kind of improve those numbers a little bit while continue to add weight, well, then you got something. But that's the biggest thing with me as far as like, you know, if he's able to add weight but not really improve numbers or slow down a little bit, then, you know, Penn State will have to figure some things out there. But, you know, aside from that, again, you know, off the field, a lot of stuff there that makes a lot of sense. Family fits Penn State, great kid, you know, has relationships with DeAndre Cook and some other guys in the Washington, D.C. area that, you know, will certainly be able to help him and kind of pull the rope in the right direction as far as getting him going, you know, when he does get on campus. But we'll have to see it from there. It's really, again, just comes down to how he's able to grow and stay athletically. I think that's the biggest question.
We're going to dig into all of that stuff, get you some more information and some more feature pieces on all of the class of 2025 players. The best way to get that is to subscribe to BlueWhiteIllustrated.com, code PSU1. That's the number that's the code you want to use to go get 2 months for $1. We're at the end of June, which means if you can add, we're getting into the beginning of September. Like it's going to tick over here to the 7th month of the year, which means you're getting inside access and information all the way into football season. So you can enjoy commit season. You can get that flavor of recruiting if that's where you're starting your journey. But more than likely, if you're here watching a recruiting video, you're obsessed with Penn State football. So join us, get some of the season, see what we do, training camp, all kinds of great information for you at BlueWhiteIllustrated.com. So Cortez Harris, the latest Nittinay Lion right now here as we stand on this day as we're recording this. He is the latest Nittany Lion in class of 2025. For Ryan Snyder, I'm Thomas Ryan Carr. As always, subscribe here to the Blue White Illustrated YouTube channel so you don't miss any more of our breaking news videos for Penn State commits.